Hi there, I'm Kevin Benedict, Senior Vice President of Solution Strategy here at Regalix, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Today, my guest is Richard Mendis, who's Head of Product Management at Tibco. Thanks for joining us, Richard.
Thanks for having me. It's been a while. Good to connect again.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that in a moment here, but where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Northern Virginia. I'm usually on the road quite often, but today I'm happy to be home, working from home in Northern Virginia, about 30 minutes outside of DC.
Very good. Well, I'm in Boise, but you can tell that because I'm wearing my bow tie, and everyone in Boise wears bow ties. But so, Richard, talk to me. You and I have known each other for many years, especially a lot of that time in the enterprise mobility space. How did you end up from there to being head of product management here at Tibco? Yeah,
I'm actually I'm head of product marketing, but yeah, I can talk a little bit about what that is. But yeah, the journey has been interesting. I think we met each other back in the mobile application craze days, and it's been an interesting journey from there. I was at a startup that did mobile backend as a service, which was an important, enabling technology for that whole, multi-platform mobile experience. We then kind of pivoted into the broader area of what's known as microservices to, help with serverless and function as a service and that type of enabling technology that's a little bit more broader than mobile. And then we ended up at Tibco, which is a fantastic company. It's one of the most important technology companies that you may not have heard of. Unless you and I, I'm sure, with our gray hair, we know the name, but folks today may not have heard of it. But it's an interesting company, and we'll talk about it in more detail.
Oh, very good, absolutely. And so, head of product marketing at Tibco. We'll talk about all the different things that you do, but what all is included in product marketing in your world?
Sure. So it's sometimes referred to at Tibco as portfolio marketing, but it's essentially all of product marketing activities. So I've got kind of almost like think of two product marketing teams that cover the key line business units at Tibco, which are integration software as well as analytics software. And as part of product marketing, of course, as you know, we're kind of at the intersection between sales, product management, and technology. So we're distilling the key value and benefits of our product into a way that can be easily communicated to our customers and prospects, as well as doing a whole bunch of other supporting marketing functions like analyst relations, voice of the customer, and market and competitive intelligence.
Man, that's a big scope and scale of responsibility there. So talk to me about the problem space that your products are addressing. If you could boil it down into some concise thing, what problems are you solving?
Sure. So we have a term that we use at Tibco that I think it summarizes this well. What we do for companies is provide them with connected intelligence solutions. So what I mean by that is it's all of the infrastructure that powers a company's digital transformation efforts that connects their systems, their applications, their data using integration technology, and then helps them gain insight and take action from that data with analytics technology.
Oh, man, that's powerful. Thank you for doing that. Now, I use a phrase a lot when I write and analyze this kind of space and talk about digital transformation. And the acronym is OILS, for Optimized Information Logistics Systems. The idea there is that information has to move, in real time or even faster than real time into predictive times. And in order to do that, you really have to have a system where data can move from end to end, and any place is needed instantly, especially given that so many of the interactions are digital today and we're all impatient digital and mobile users. Yep. So is that really the space you guys are focused on?
That's kind of, you defined it exactly, the oil space. It's the digital oil, right? That powers and fuels companies. That's exactly what Tibco does. It's built. It has a very rich history in enterprise integration and messaging, And as you imagine, that powers a lot of our day-to-day lives, from financial services to airlines to oil and gas companies to consumer goods. And more recently, it's also invested both organically and through acquisitions in the analytics, machine learning, data science space.
Well, I'd imagine, because if you are managing the flow of data, then you have access to a whole lot of information that's going to be useful and valuable. So let's talk about the term digital transformation.
Yep.
How would you position Tibco as being a critical component of any company's digital transformation initiatives?
Sure. So I like to, try and bring it down to the tactical level, right? I mean, I love the term digital transformation, but sometimes it's at risk of being overused and a bit high level. So
I do that all the time.
Same here. So how I like to think of it, Kevin, is look, if digital transformation is key to your business and every company has to be a digital company now, we view connected intelligence as kind of the foundation for that. So in order to digitally transform, you must be able to connect to different systems to enable efficient business processes. You have to be able to handle vastly increasing volumes of data, both from existing systems as well as kind of this all of the Internet of Things and other connected devices that are generating more data than ever before. Once you can connect to your systems and handle that data, you then need to gain insight from it, right? Having data for the sake of data is kind of pointless. How do you get insight from that data and be able to take action on it in real time, which might require things like predictive analytics and machine learning? And then the last component is, how do you enable all employees in an organization, not just the developers, but business users, everyone from the front office to the back office of a company, to be involved and participate in digital transformation, right? And so business process management and those types of areas are another place that Tibco plays in. So the combination of this integration, what we call pervasive integration, what some of the analysts has dubbed the term pervasive integration, as well as systems of insight, the combination of those two areas combined gives you connected intelligence that enables digital transformation. So that's how we think of it in Tibco.
Oh, and that's exactly how I think of it as well, because especially when I'm talking to anybody that's engaged in kind of a digital interaction, which is everybody with their customers out there, they're really wanting to provide a personalized experience, one that's contextually relevant. And if you don't have immediate, quick, fast, agile integration, there's no way you're going to recognize who's on your website right now and be able to really give them that optimal experience.
Correct. Absolutely. And the ability to, if you peel that back, right? So creating delightful customer experiences in real time, if you kind of lift under the covers and look at what that entails, it's really some fundamental technology components that enable it, right? Real-time messaging, in-memory computing, data stream processing in real time, applying machine learning models in real time, all of those kind of elements, and of course enabled by all the best practices that have arisen in the last few years around APIs and things like that, is what really enables it. And stitching, being able to abstract all that complexity and provide out-of-the-box solutions that help companies implement those solutions is what Tibco is all about.
I have a checklist here of buzzwords that I'm supposed to say. One of them is Agile.
Yeah.
And I imagine in your role there in pervasive integration, agility really is not just a buzzword, but a mantra there. So talk to me about how your solutions enhance a company's ability to be agile.
Yeah, so I think the one constant in this world is change, right? And rapid change as we I forget the term for it, but with each successive technology iteration, the time span of that technology adoption keeps shrinking, right? And so whether you're in a business context or in a consumer context, as an organization, you need to support more rapid change and therefore be more agile. And that means, again, a couple of different things, right? So number one is you can't be in a situation where you, as a company, create a system to support a process, take months or years to do it, and then be resistant to change, right? You have to create a culture and the infrastructure in a company that you can very quickly create new systems to automate processes and do things, as well as make changes to existing ones to adapt. And so, having the technology infrastructure, which is half of the equation, and then also having the culture, which is the other half, right? The people and the process and the technology. Those are the key elements to support agility. And again, from a Tibco perspective, one of the other things it means is also being able to support different areas where these systems are running. So traditionally, and for many of our large customers, there's still a lot of focus on on-premise based systems, right? Where if you're doing things in high volume, high scale, but in real time, think of like a trading floor on a stock exchange, for example. There's still a lot of on-premise systems, and to some degree, some of those will always stay there. But in order to be more agile, you need to complement that infrastructure with things like, cloud-based deployment. And I don't just mean, lift and shift or hosting an application in the cloud, but truly taking advantage of some of this, modern cloud-native solutions like serverless infrastructure, function as a service, so you can do things more agile and more cost efficiently in order to serve your customer needs.
Oh yeah, I spend a lot of time writing and analyzing the retail industry, and so many of the kind of the post collapse stories of many of these retail companies are an inability to quickly change and support digital environments. And it's because they're using these old, almost static infrastructures that just didn't permit the rapid changes that they needed to compete in the business. So yep. Absolutely, that's important. Well, to make sure that I overuse the term digital transformation, Richard, talk to me about digital transformation in your role in marketing. Sure. How have you seen kind of marketing strategies at high-tech companies like Tibco evolve and change over the past 5 years?
Yeah, it's that's been interesting as someone who's been in marketing most of their career, and even when I was in software companies, if you remember the guys at Siebel Systems, that name that rings a bell, I actually worked on marketing automation solutions, some of the predecessors to Salesforce and Marketo and products like that. And
there was actually predecessors to Salesforce?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. It's been that long. It doesn't feel like it, but yeah. And there were predecessors to Siebel, believe it or not. But, it's been interesting kind of being a part of that evolution of the front office marketing automation, Salesforce automation. It's been most of my career, either on the supply side of that or the consumption side, which I am today as a consumer of that technology. Look, I think we at Tibco have fully embraced that paradigm, right? It's where I would say, if anything, we're 100% digital in terms of our marketing. There's not a whole lot of other aspects, whether it's physical direct mail or outdoor or things like that. There are elements of that we may do from a branding perspective, but by and large, a lot of the interactive marketing we do with prospects and customers is all digital. We have both Salesforce automation as well as marketing automation tools, plus a whole variety of different ancillary technology that sits around that. And all of the interactions with our prospects, we can trace from when they first, how they find us, right? Whether it's on the web or through a campaign or something like that, to all of the interactions, how they've consumed content, whether they watched a webinar, whether they've had interactions with a call center person, or interactions with a field salesperson. We can track it through their life cycle. And of course, there's gaps. And I think, that's something that as marketers, as digital marketers, we're always trying to close that, that interaction gap, if you will, so we can look at every different, aspect of a customer's journey through the funnel. But I think we have a pretty good job. We have good discipline. Thomas Bean, the CMO, who took over, who I report to, is I would say a digital native, and many of the folks on his organization are as well. And so we've got good discipline of not only implementing these solutions, but looking at the metrics every week, right? Marketing qualified leads to sales qualified leads, leads, and tracking those through the funnel. And we pay close attention. We're very data driven from that perspective. Now, having said that, I'm sure there's a lot, that we can do to improve. We're always looking for kind of, the edge there. And it sounds like you're doing some interesting work at Regalix around that. But yeah, it's been very interesting to see the digital transformation of marketing, over the past, I'm dating myself now, but over the past decade or so,
Oh, yeah.
the shift to social, mobile, right? Analytics and cloud, the SMAC stack, if you will, is it's not a matter of whether you use it, it's how you use it today in marketing, right? And doing that real-time personalization across multiple channels is really key.
Oh, yeah. So talk to me about the changing relationship between the sales and the marketing organization. Yeah. Sometimes, marketing thinks they're doing a good job, but they think sales are falling down, or sales thinks they do a great job, but marketing falls down. How do you see all these digital transformation impacting that relationship between sales and marketing?
Yeah, so that's an interesting. I mean, there's always. I think that dynamic of sales wanting leads and marketing, never being able to provide enough from their perspective, or from the marketing perspective, sales never following up fast enough, right, on leads. I think that dynamic will always exist to some degree, and I think part of it is a good dynamic to have, so it keeps pressure on both sides to do those things. But if you step back for a minute and look at, let's take our space specifically, right? Because I think business to consumer, business to business marketing, there are some differences, and specific to business software, the space that Tibco's in, and probably many of your customers, I think there's been some interesting dynamics, right? One of which is the whole rapid adoption of open source, right? So, in marketing, and product marketing, you're also, always trying to be cognizant of what are the substitutes to your solution. And for many B2B companies today, open source could, not be a threat, but could be an opportunity, I think, to, from a marketing perspective, to try and get people to adopt your technology before they even talk to a sales rep, right? Mm-hmm. And, that's something that, we've also paid very close attention to and have embraced at Tibco. We have a lot of open source projects that we provide that are first-class citizens of our, incorporated into our commercial products, and we provide support for. But we want to disperse, infrastructure software that powers digital transformation to every developer, whether they work at the largest Fortune, 500 company or the smallest pre-money startup. We want to provide them with the technology to enable them to build these great experiences. And the ideal, if you ask a sales guy, the ideal situation is where he walks into an opportunity or a prospect, and he's in the meeting, and they say, "Oh yeah, I read about your company in online, or I watched your webinar." Imagine if he walks into a meeting and the person says, "Oh yeah, we use your software today. That's pretty interesting. Tell me more about what else you guys do," right? Imagine that type of a conversation, and that's what from a marketing perspective, we have to work a lot closely with product as well to ensure that we are putting out technology that with zero to low barrier of friction that individual developers in these companies can adopt before we even have a conversation with that customer, right? So that's another area that we're focusing on.
So it's almost like a do-it-yourself sales process or path to purchase journey. So a customer can arrive, can consume the information in the size and amounts they need to take them to the next step in the journey. And then they're in a sandbox and they're using your software as open source and they're building it into their products. And then they're ready to purchase. And that whole process has walked them along, and the right content has been at each step to actually get them to a purchase. That's brilliant, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think we invented anything new from the trial concept, but really being able to see that open source and put a lot of investment behind it from a company, not just in terms of marketing but product, so that it's okay even if that developer doesn't buy from Tibco, because at some point he's going to move on to a job and he's going to hopefully think of the good experience he had, and maybe there's an opportunity there, right? And so we in terms of providing the open source. We look at it as also an important aspect of the branding, and developer advocacy and grassroots marketing effort, if you will.
Got it. Let's take a step down the ladder into deeper depth tactics here. Yep. So does that kind of do-it-yourself process that some people are engaged in, does that require new and unique forms of content?
Absolutely.
You find yourself needing more content and maybe in a different shape and size than in the past?
Absolutely. So if you think about who that developer prospect is in the case of Tibco, it's typically a millennial, right? And millennials as with anyone actually of any age today, is bombarded with media, right? There's more and more content vying for the eyeballs and attention of all our prospects. And so being able to provide, high value, bite-sized content, right? So rich, help them separate the signal from the noise and find your nugget of content that, whether it's an infographic or a white paper or a webinar or what have you, is very important. Content that's a lot more educational in nature and less about kind of marketing your message is important, right? So as people go out and search for information on a topic, how are you positioning to be top of mind and subject matter expert on that topic? And then finally, the other dynamic, similar to open source, that's taking over the world from a B2B software perspective, Kevin, that I don't think all companies have caught on to yet, and it's probably one of those paradigm shifts that'll take a while and then happen very quickly, is how people consume and buy B2B software today, I think will be completely different 10 years from now. We're starting to see it a little bit now. Cloud marketplaces, Amazon Marketplace, Azure Marketplace, etc. Those are the platforms and the channels through which these companies, any company, will try and buy business software in the future. Just like today, those books behind you on your shelf, you can't imagine not going to Amazon, right? Or even, let's say, the online website of your favorite, brick and mortar retailer to look at the book and perhaps order it. I can't imagine a scenario in the future as more and more applications are delivered over SaaS, or digital channels. I can't imagine that anyone's going to go buy something without going through one of these cloud providers. And I think that is an interesting dynamic and change that's happening, and not everyone's ready for it. You're going to have to establish best practices from a marketing perspective of how do you market with AWS? How do you market with Azure? How do you price your products? How do you break it up so that it fits the model through which customers are used to buying and consuming software through AWS and Azure? This is something that I think B2B companies are starting to realize, but haven't realized how big of a change and shift it's going to be.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that scoop. You heard it here first. Thanks for sharing that, Richard. So I imagine you guys are engaged in understanding the various personas of the individuals on your sites from, are these a decision maker? Are they a technical implementer? Are they a systems integrator? And then walking each of those different personas through kind of different sets of information. Absolutely. Is that how you guys do it?
That's exactly what we do. So from a product marketing perspective, we follow a methodology where we define the various personas of our products, and we map what's called a buyer journey of those personas. So what are the different stages that each of those personas go through? And then what are the different assets or touch points along that journey that we need to make sure we have to enable them to move from one step to the next? That's exactly how we kind of think of it. We have what we call a messaging deck for each of the major solutions we provide that describes these personas in great lengths, has a messaging tree, buyer journey, etc. So absolutely, that's kind of how that's the marketing mantra that we follow within Tibco.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I imagine each one of those personas have their own, so they have their own journey, and each step, as you defined, you have your playbook, if you would. Here's the kind of information that's needed for that persona at that level. And what kinds of content might there be? Like infographics, videos, what do you see in there?
It's a whole bunch of all of the above, Kevin. It's, infographic, webinars, a lot of digital content, certainly, right? We talked about the importance of that. So less on the physical stuff. Having said that, trade shows and industry shows are an important aspect of the software world. And so we do have a lot of physical interaction with prospects at trade shows like that. I just got back from the AWS Summit in London, which was interesting. About 10,000 attendees, and of course, having the best practices around the messaging in your booth and the types of assets you need for the prospects that come by, they are important as well. But yeah, absolutely, a lot of digital assets around things like infographics, webinars, white papers, etc.
Got it. So Richard, in the age of account-based marketing, where it's not volume, it's quality, What role does events, as you pointed out, those kind of events still play in a company's marketing portfolio?
So great question. So I think there's two potential roles, right? So there's vertical events where, there's a specific industry event and you need to be positioned as a company, as a thought leader in that space with highly specialized messaging for the problem statements in that vertical, right? Tibco has, tens of thousands of customers around the world in various different industries. And although the technology we provide is horizontal in nature, we have enabled some, fascinating case studies for companies that are repeatable in these industries. So for example, at T-Mobile, they use our solution to optimize all of their front office operations, from everything from provisioning the phone to promotions that customers get in real time. So imagine, you're launching a new iPhone, say, for example, and you're going to have a high volume of people on the day. All of the infrastructure that powers that is Tibco behind the scenes. And so, being able to go to a telecom event, for example, and articulate that value proposition is important. And then, of course, there are the horizontal events. So I mentioned AWS, being able to go to, these events where companies are looking at how they incorporate the cloud in their digital transformation. It's important for us to be present at those events as well, so that we can have conversations both with existing customers who are looking to migrate to the cloud and make sure that we're front and center and say, hey, you use Tibco, and by the way, not only do you use Tibco in your on-premises world, but we can help you migrate that critical infrastructure to the cloud in AWS when you're ready. But also have conversations with people that would otherwise not normally be exposed to Tibco, the individual developers at startups who are looking to use AWS, and talk about the open source offerings that we have that can help them get to market faster.
Wow, thanks for sharing your wisdom and experience in those areas. Last question, Richard. Talk to us about GDPR and its impact at Tibco.
Yeah.
Last week I was in New York City at a SAP event. We had a room full of, various people from consumer packaged goods and retail in the room. Everybody's kind of brainstorming about where they are and where the impact is and what are the steps they're taking and all that kind of thing. But for Tibco itself, what's the impact there?
Yeah, so GDPR, so first of all, Tibco kind of operates like a public company, was a public company until a few years ago. And so, since we operate in over 30 countries, we have a pretty good governance, risk, and compliance, practice, right? And we are used to complying with that sort of regulation. So, from an internal perspective, we've implemented all the steps to ensure that we're compliant with GDPR. At this AWS Summit in London, for example, you no longer can just, scan people randomly and make sure, and market to them, the way that people may have done in the past. So we had to make sure we had signage and all the proper, I's dotted and T's crossed to make sure we're compliant with GDPR. We also see it as an opportunity, right? So as a company that provides technology that's at the heart of everyone's data, including customer data, there's an opportunity for Tibco to provide solutions to help companies with GDPR challenges. And so we have a variety of products ranging from, analytics to business process management, to master data management, to help companies, bring up their own compliance to this kind of stuff.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you can no longer have a clown on roller skates just going around scanning people's badges?
Exactly.
So Richard, I want to thank you so much. You've shared so much of your wisdom, your experience, your insight, and we just greatly appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. Always a pleasure to join you, and you do a great job of doing these interviews and disseminating the information. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you guys out there for joining.